Digital growth is a journey. It is a journey from good to great, but it is not a journey that one takes alone as an individual. No, digital growth is a journey that individuals and teams throughout your bank, throughout your credit union, throughout your fintech commit to take together. But how can you commit to take this journey if you're so busy that you don't have space and time to break free from what you're doing right now in the present moment, to review where you've been, to gain new insights into potential future growth opportunities through education, and then to really think about how to apply what you've been learning to continue to move forward to do even better together? Well, let's find out together on today's episode of the Banking on Digital Growth podcast. Greetings and hello, I'm James Robert Lay, and I'd like to welcome you to another episode of the Banking on Digital Growth podcast. Today's episode is part of the Digital Growth Journey series, and joining me for today's conversation is Matt Vance. Matt is the first Vice President of Marketing and Product Strategy at Salal Credit Union, a financial cooperative that believes people are powerful when they work together. Now, Matt and his team have lived out this belief as they have all been working together to move forward and make progress along their digital growth journey at Salal. And you can do the same by applying the insights that Matt shares so that you can maximize your future growth potential at your bank, at your credit union, or at your fintech. Welcome to the show, Matt. It is good to share time with you today, buddy.
Yeah, great to see you too.
I'm loving the sunny skies in Seattle right now. Such a beautiful day. It looks good on camera. For those who are listening, you should actually check out the video because Matt, he's very well lit. I thought it was sunny skies. No, it's just gray. But we always have to look to the bright side. So before we get into talking about your progress that you've made, that your team has made along your digital growth journey, what has been going well for you personally, professionally, at your pick to get started?
Sure. We've got a lot of really great things going on here at Salal recently. We've been working for the last year on a brand new website. We're set to launch here at the start of December on that. We've got some new awareness campaigns pumping out for us. So really kind of targeting to some niche areas that we've been interested in growing and building out. So we've got some of that out there, getting some of the first rounds of data back on that, seeing some progress there. So a lot of good things as we're ending the year here and getting ready for a good 2024.
Well, your team, you've been on this journey, and I think it's very interesting to note for those watching and listening that it has been comprised of a cross section of leaders across the credit union. Y'all have recently wrapped up the Digital Growth University. And thinking about all the progress you've made, and I want to come back to this point here that you made on these 2 points around niche and website, but think about all the progress that you made on your journey. When you first started this to where you're at now, for you, what have been the biggest lessons that you have learned as a leader to this point through this journey?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's been a great experience so far, and being able to kind of finish up that Digital Growth University in the last few months here. And you're right, we tried to take an approach when we first looked at bringing the program on board. We knew we wanted it to be a good cross section of our organization, and I think that's one of the biggest things that we've learned through this is finding to make sure that get that vision and that alignment at the top of the organization, and then activate that through the management and the VPs within the organization that really have the pulse in the day to day and can really kind of start to drive some results and get them excited and bought into the vision. I mean, I think that's where we've really started to see some good success with that. I've had some good conversations with our managers that have been involved in the program, and they start to say, we've been wanting to do this stuff for years, or, oh, I see how I can apply this over to that program over there. And so we really kind of started to engage and start to activate and excite folks around here, which is great, because I think it's been a bit of that cultural shift that we needed. This couldn't just be a top-down, we're going to tell you everything we're going to do. We really wanted to make this kind of a cross-section of the organization and gain that buy-in and activation throughout.
Well, it's interesting to note that this has been an exercise in open strategy. And when you look at open strategy, it's a newer school of thought. I'm curious to get your take, because as you reflect on this experience, not everyone is open to this. You have been, your team has been, your organization has been, but what would you recommend to others who might not have the same level of commitment that you all did to, first and foremost, ongoing learning as a path to future growth? That's because just learning provides that perspective. It helps people see things different. It helps people think about things different, but not everyone is there yet. And the world is changing at such a rapid pace that I feel like it's not just a technology gap anymore that is holding community financial brands back, like credit unions and community banks. It's
Mhm.
also a knowledge and an awareness gap. What would your take be on this?
I think there's power in a shared experience to that, right? And in a learning experience like that. A lot of what we did in the Digital Growth Institute and in the university side of things tends to lean a little bit more into the marketing side of things, right? And that's my wheelhouse. That's my team's wheelhouse. They don't want to hear it just from me. They don't want to be taught or talked down to from the marketing people telling them they need to do these things or this is how we're the path we're going to go. I think there's a sense of shared experience. I think there's a sense of collaboration in there. As marketers, I think we pride ourselves in collaboration. We know that better things happen when people work together. Better ideas can come to the forefront when we work together. So I think that shared experience side of it was really, really important. Let's all go through this educational experience together. Let's all be on the same page as we work through it. And having that shared experience and that shared learning environment has been so crucial. I mean, I get in conversations weekly here that it's like, oh yeah, back in that lesson, remember when we talked about that, right? And that's outside of the marketing team. So it's telling me that it's sticking. It makes my team have to do a whole lot less of the heavy lifting because we had this shared experience together, right? And bringing in that outsider to help kind of usher that through is really helpful, I think, to obtain that buy-in too. So for us, it's been really, really important. So having that collaboration, that open experience, I think has been so key to where we've seen such more of an accelerated growth than we'd maybe been in the last year in this topic.
It's interesting because you talk about this acceleration. I understand that people feel like it's a matter of perception. They feel like they get stuck and they feel like, well, I've been trying to communicate this internally, your perspective on a shared experience, what others have used or coined a common language has
Mhm.
helped to remove some of the roadblocks that has led to human transformation in conjunction with digital transformation. You touched on this idea of niche before, and that niche is something I've discussed on the podcast. But when you think about your organization and you look at the growth opportunities for niche, why look at a niche compared to, say, just the general mass market of the community? What has helped to facilitate that transformation? Because you were even thinking that before we were even having conversations. But I would say that what I was sharing through this with your team at a broader macro level maybe either reinforce that or provided some additional thinking to help spur that, or to use your words, to help accelerate that much further, farther, faster. But why a niche in today's complex digital world?
Yeah, no, I mean, you can scale digital so easily, and that's the beauty of it, right? But I think for us, we've always found more success when we have targeted more specifically, found an audience that has a need. We kind of pride ourselves in a little bit of a saying here of, we want to do the hard things others don't, right? There's a lot of markets that other people don't want to touch or don't think they're going to be profitable. We think there's chances there, right? We believe that opportunity deserves a chance, right? That's another kind of a credo that we live by here at Salal. So those niches are really important to us. It kind of goes back to a super high level, kind of back to that blue ocean, red ocean strategy, right? Why go compete in a red ocean environment when everyone around you is doing the same thing, trying to capture the same market? Find where there isn't that hyper competition, right? And try to build out something for yourself there. It's also, quite honestly, it's just a lot more interesting that way too. I get to come into work every day instead of going, how are we going to compete against, Seattle's a pretty hyper competitive banking market here. We have some amazing credit unions locally here. We have a lot of community banks in this area. Obviously, all the tech industries and everyone around here. So everyone wants to be here. So it gets really, really competitive from a banking environment up here. So why go compete head to head day in and day out against all of those folks when we can just find our own little niches? We've been able to be really successful in growing our organization and just kind of finding those and growing those and building communities within those niches. And I think, to me, it's proven profitable. And again, it's really interesting work because you get to kind of build something to be at the forefront of something.
Well, that's where the work that you've done as individuals, as a team, you have the marketing team, but then you have the larger cohort with cross sectionals with different business leaders from different business lines. I would say, if I recall, there was a big aha moment around class number 9 and 10, which was around the story selling methodology. And then that led into a conversation in class 10 around content, which connects back to this idea of niche. Because I vividly remember there was a lot of excitement, not necessarily coming from marketing, but coming from other business lines. And I guess it's just where it really began to click of, wow, we have the potential to play the role of this helpful, this empathetic guide. We've probably have been playing the hero in the past, and it's no one's fault to that. It's just that's just what the perspective was. But when you think about niche in content and focus, where's the opportunity here to continue to leverage, like you said, digital is a multiplier. It allows us to scale very, very quickly. Content is a path forward to make connections and place deposits into the minds of people within these niche communities, and community goes beyond the physical borders of boundaries and zip codes. But when you think about the awareness and the common bond, the common language, first and foremost internally and then externally, how is content playing into this perspective from your worldview within marketing?
Yeah, I think in a few different ways. I mean, I think we've learned through this process, and bringing those kind of cross section of right, bringing our business lines through this process too, is help them realize that they have a lot of good stories to tell, that we can throw out offers, right? You can all day, every day throw out a great CD rate. You can throw out a great auto rate, and you can go and you can fish and you can get what you need there and move on to the next thing. But that's not a long-term strategy. That's not a viable, community building, niche building strategy. It's the people that we're helping. It's the stories that they have, that we were there when no one else was for them, right? And so as those teams started to kind of go through this story selling methodology, they started to understand, wait, I work with members every day that tell me these things.
Mm.
How do I get that over to you guys? How does marketing activate those for us now? And so that's been really important back and forth now. And we've been able to take that. One example, good example over here is our business services team, and be able to work with their business members who had a great story to tell. Specifically, we do a lot of work in the cannabis industry. We were one of the first here in Washington to get started, and we've been able to grow that and been able to really help that industry grow along with it too. And some of those businesses have had some really hard times gaining access to a traditional banking environment. There's a lot of really tough stories out there. And so for us, it was like, guys, this is really great content that we can take, and let's tell those businesses stories. And through those stories, we're able to tell how we were able to help. And that just produces content off of that. We've been able to go out. We shot a few of those stories with our businesses and created whole campaigns off of that. Have created both, from video content to blog content to advertising content, all based upon the stories in which we can tell, and can frame it around them. So those stories have they have a lot of legs. You can take it into a lot of different directions, and that content isn't just, we're going to interview someone, we're going to put it on a blog. There are so many different areas that we can go off with that. We are kicking around, as we sit here and talk on a podcast, we've been kicking around the idea and wanting to get a podcast off the ground for us too. And it's something we're starting to look into as well, because we work with a lot of businesses, we work with a lot of members that have interesting stories to tell. And why not share that and share with that together with them?
Why is human transformation so hard when it comes to, because I'm asking, and you're laughing. If you're not watching, Matt's giving a bit of a chuckle right now. I'm laughing too, because this is, to me, has been the hardest part of any organization, and which is why I respect the work that you've been doing. Because if I think back historically over the last decade, I've led marketing leaders, VPs, SVPs through a boot camp like experience. And then they had to go back and then communicate this with their team. And it was met with mixed reaction. And then I said, okay, well, let's take the marketing teams through this. And that's great. Marketing begins to learn, marketing begins to transform. But then there's others in the organization who feel like they're getting left behind. You know, if I think about having to work with technology or work with people, technology sometimes seems to be quote unquote easier.
Mhm.
because you tell the technology to do what the technology is going to do, and the technology tends to, for the most part, it works. But then there's this whole complexity around human transformation. Why is the people side of this so hard from your perspective and experience?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think we're creatures of habit. We're creatures of safety, right? So
Mm.
change equals risk. And for anyone to do something differently, open themselves up to new ideas, it's a risk. It could fail. Does that mean that they fail? Are they a failure, right? So it's a different dynamic there. I think being able to put yourself out there, take that risk, try something new is challenging. And obviously there's others that are better at it than some, and they're able to take those risks and really become the multipliers of the leaders in their industry, right? But I think it's trying to, again, educate yourself, understand what the change is coming, why the change is happening, and make a calculated risk. You don't have to lean in all 100% right at the start, right? Maybe 25% at a time, right? Do a few tests here and there and see what happens. Test and learn, right? I think is a good way to combat that. But I think in general, most folks, gosh, they just don't want the risk. They don't want the change. They're used to doing it the way they've done it, right? And that's a hard thing for some folks to move off of.
And that's one of the reasons, like, when we developed this digital growth university methodology, it was to create a space with some psychological safety that, you're here to learn. I am here to learn just as much as you're here to learn. I definitely have a perspective, but other people have a perspective too. I take the Socratic approach to knowledge. Is I know nothing, and I reserve the right to change my perspective based upon new information. And I think that is where the sharing of ideas, particularly as y'all came together once a month as a community cohort, you're learning as individuals, doing some self-reflective thinking, and then you came together as a team. You had small breakouts to where you were able to share some thinking in a private one-on-one context, or a small group of three, and then we were able to take that back. And it builds this habit of, you know what, it's okay to share, it's okay to learn, it's okay to say I don't even know, and we're going to continue to learn together. And that's where you, not only through the university, you've also learned, particularly more so as a marketing team, but then also I think business lines have learned through this as well, which is the digital secret shopping studies that y'all started with, and you benchmarked your website against others, which, as you mentioned to start this conversation, you're in the process of getting ready to launch a new website. How did those insights that you learned very early on in this experience provide a path forward to guide you to build this new website that sells?
Yeah, no, I think that's the main thing there that we learned was, you know, you can have CTAs littered throughout your site, but it doesn't mean anyone's going to click. It doesn't mean they're ready to buy at that moment. So I think for us is getting better at nurturing that lead and that sales process through. Not a, well, we gave you all the information on page, so you should be ready to just click and apply now. It doesn't mean they're ready, and it doesn't mean they're going to come back. So how do we start to set that relationship up for success? How do we start to build some trust and rapport? How do we get you to say, hey, we know you're in the market for an auto. Download this guide that's going to help you, find the best car for you, or find the best financing for you, right? We're able to capture that lead. We're able to then start them on a drip campaign that helps them better realize, and we can kind of stay in touch with them, keeps top of mind with them. So when they are ready, they're going to come back to us. I think we were trying to kind of force the sale a little bit too much there. So as we were looking really at this new website, we really wanted to take an approach and look at how do we nurture these leads a little bit better? How do we build that trust and rapport in, and not just sell, right? We want to build relationships with that new site. So in the end goal, it's obviously always, how do we get you to sell, or how do we get you to consider us down the road, right? But really, we understand that's through building trust and rapport with them, than just giving you the information and thinking that that's going to be the thing that's going to make you say, yep, let's do it.
Which comes back to what I was referencing before with class 9 in the university. It's playing the role of the helpful and empathetic guide. And I really do find that it's then that class that connects back to some of the foundational strategies in class 6 around the digital journey, buying journey that people take. That's where people are like, I'm starting to get it. I'm starting to understand it. And then you can apply that now going forward into these different experiences, like building a website as you are. you bring up a really great point. And I think about, and I want to get your take on this. There was another organization who I was recently talking to, and they shared with me that they drove and they bought some traffic, so digital ad campaign. They drove 12,000 visits to their primary checking account page. So they 3x traffic, but conversions stayed flat. They had no change in conversion. And I think this was like over a 90-day period of time. And my question was, well, did you change anything from day 1 to day 30, from going from there to day 31, or day 1 to 14, change something day 15? And they said no. And I said, well, did you run any secret shopping on this particular initiative? They said no. And I said, so you kept everything ceteris paribus, all things being equal, throughout the 90-day period? They said yes. Why, from your perspective, do some organizations, they launch something and then they think, man, we just spent all this money, we bought all this traffic, but we didn't see a bump in conversions, and they perceive it as a failure? And I'm like, no, that was a learning experience, because you learned that there are 12,000 people, or 12,000 people who visited this particular product page. That's great. The lesson is, though, why did no one take the next steps? And it was from doing this over 1,000 times now, it was very obvious. It was a positioning. It was a little bit of UX. It was a little bit of call to action, little micro changes that they could have made that I guarantee would have increased their conversion rate, and they would have saw a bump in that. But why do some, we'll just say, marketing teams or marketing leaders fail to gain ongoing learning from the marketplace, and as a result, they're losing millions in loans and deposits?
Yeah, you know, trying to call back into my 18 years of experience in marketing within this industry, and
Sure.
I think it's a handful of things. It's probably a little bit different for every organization. I've been guilty of it myself over my years as well. I think maybe two traps that I could fall into is one is you get so enamored with the creative and what you did, and you think it's so great that like, we don't need to change anything with this. This work is some of the most stellar work we've ever put out. It just needs to hit that edge of where enough people get there, and eventually they're going to get it and kind of drive it. So I definitely think that's one of it. I think another trap that a lot of marketing teams get into, I see this a lot within credit unions too, is the teams are just busy. And so they're able to get that campaign out, they're able to launch that campaign, but then they're on to the next thing. And they don't have the time, they don't build the time to monitor and adjust. And I can say, look, I've been guilty of that many, many times myself. I think that's something, as we're launching this new website, we were mindful of. And I think, the Digital Growth University really helped us understand this too, is we need to be a lot more mindful about building that monitoring and that testing and that constant evolution of that website, not to be a static thing that, oh, we'll take a look every 6 months or once a year, we're going to go give the website a polish. It's an ongoing day-to-day practice, right? And you're maybe taking different sections and you're looking at that, or maybe depending upon what campaigns and areas of focus you're running. But it's a living, breathing tool that has to have that nurturing. It's like a plant, right? You're going to have to water it to see it grow. You're going to have to make sure it's getting enough sunlight to see it grow. And there's a lot of different components to check or kind of plug into that website to help that. But the idea that you could build it and they'll come and they'll do what you want is something that it's rare that it happens. It does from time to time, but it gets rare. And I think I've learned that throughout the years too, of you've got to nurture it better.
Well, you bring up a great point. You mentioned 18 years of perspective. I want to go back all the way 18 years ago in your mind to where you're at today, because I'm right there with you. I'm pushing 21, 22 years now. And if you think back over the last 18 years of just your own journey of growth, how do you feel marketing has transformed the most over the past 18 years?
Well, I can say for me personally, I can think back, running a small marketing department at, in my early 20s at a $125 billion credit union, making copies of rate brochures on pastel papers. I mean, there's been a lot of change from that, right?
Yeah.
In helping that organization kind of grow and mature in its marketing, branding, and experience there. So, yeah, I mean, gosh, I think digital is probably overall that biggest change. That idea of what we can do and how you can communicate with people, the numbers of things and areas and places you can communicate with folks with now is just massive, right? And so, trying to wrap your head around that, and that's constantly changing. So, get good people around you that have different perspectives, that are not consuming the same media in the same places that you are, to really understand those perspectives better, understand where you're missing gaps and opportunities. There's a lot of really good partners. A lot of your teammates are able to go out there and help with that as well, right? No one, marketing executive today has all the answers. There's just too much out there. It's too fast. It's just changing so often.
I'm so glad you pointed on that. I want to highlight it. You said no one marketing executive has all the answers. And for the CEOs and others in the C-suite who are listening, please hear that, because it is happening. The transformation is happening at such a massive point. I've even started doing some exercises with other organizations, just asking, it's a philosophical question: what is marketing? And ask it across the organization, because it's a matter of perspective. And I think, to your point, when you start gaining perspectives from different people through different paths, through different experiences, it's very helpful to gain awareness and alignment of where people are. Just meet them where they're at. It's not right, it's not wrong. And then you can create a path forward together. And you used the word collaboration earlier. On this note, starting to look ahead towards the future as we start to wrap up here, where does AI play into this next evolution? Because this is like, I think back, 1994 was the year the internet reached the mass consciousness of humanity. And now we're pretty much 30 years after that. We're 1 year into the AI experience at a macro consciousness level of humanity, going back to November 30th, 2022 with ChatGPT, which, as of recording, that's a whole interesting narrative. I took off. I was doing an entrepreneur workshop at my kid's school on Friday, and then took off Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and just disconnected from the world. And I come back on Tuesday as of recording and saw the whole open AI Sam Altman news and that whole shakeup. It's like, wow, that's the whole thing that I sort of have to, rewrap my head around. But when you think about AI through the lens of marketing and just the lens of growth, where's your head with this yourself?
I mean, there's a lot of opportunities there. We've already been able to leverage, some scale off of that. Personally, our team has really leaned into, from a content and copywriting perspective, being able to help us move faster in a lot of those areas. I mean, that's just kind of scratching the surface type stuff to it. I think this is where it's important, again, get people around you that are smarter and passionate about these things, right? Not to say that I'm not. I think it's really interesting. I do think it's going to transform a lot of what we do, but there's other people who are more invested and watch this a whole lot more closely than I do, right? And so get those people around you that can help show you the opportunities as well. I do think there's a lot. We're starting to look to see how it can potentially transform our experience from a member standpoint, right? How does it help our call centers? How does it help some of our other teams? How's it going to help us analyze data and help us make smarter decisions? I think that's where I'd like to kind of watch and build and grow capabilities there too. It has the ability to analyze huge sets of data really fast and build recommendations off of that. So how do we use that and leverage that to make us smarter? I think will kind of be key going forward.
It's continuously learning and looking into opportunities, which is ongoing education and awareness. And it's not that you have to be an expert at everything. It's just, like you said, surround yourself with people who are passionate about it. I think that's important, but also are able to transform that passion into practical application, which, as we wrap up here, when you look ahead towards the future, number one, what are you just feeling most hopeful, most excited about for your future and the future of the credit union through the work that you've been doing, are doing, and will continue to go forward into the future doing?
Yeah, I am, we're in a season of Thanksgiving here. I am greatly thankful for my team. I've been able to surround myself with amazing people in my marketing staff who are who are talented, who are smarter than I am in a lot of these things, and want to grow and build and push these things. And the executive team here, we've been able to make some good decisions and put people in the right places, I think, to accelerate some of that growth and some of that opportunity, right? Leaning into those niches is an area where we want to be, and finding those open spaces for us. It's interesting work. It's exciting work. I think, as I mentioned earlier. So for that, I'm really excited to see how we can grow and evolve as an organization. I think there's a lot of space to ramp up, especially once kind of the market kind of starts to take a little bit better of a turn here. I think that acceleration of growth for a lot of organizations out there, it's going to be a fun time again. Right now, it's not an entirely fun time to be in banking for a lot. So I think we're kind of on the cusp of hopefully kind of getting out of that. So really excited to see where we can go kind of next from there.
Well, the good news is everything is a cycle. The sun always follows the darkness. The light is at the break of dawn, if you will. And with that, what would be, I always like to wrap up on a practical note, the one thing that you would recommend someone who is watching, someone who is listening, that they do next on their own journey of growth to practically apply some of what we've been talking about here so that they can walk away with their next best step going forward into the future? What would the one thing that you would recommend next on their journey?
Yeah, I would say just open themselves up to opportunities, open themselves up to collaboration. Thinking you can learn it all yourself, thinking that you can build it all yourself. It's so much easier when able to find a good team of people around you, whether that be peers inside of your organization or peers outside in the industry too. Just being able to have that support network around and challenge and push each other, I think accelerates growth so much faster and opens yourself up to new ideas you didn't even consider.
That 1 + 1 = 11. That's the collaboration multiplier right there. It's a great way to wrap up our conversation, Matt. It has been a good one. Thank you for joining me. If someone wants to continue the conversation that we've discussed today, or we started discussing today, to your point of collaboration, what's the best way that they could just connect, reach out, say hello to you?
You can find me. You can find me online on Twitter, or LinkedIn is a great place to connect with me as well.
Connect with Matt Vance, learn with Matt Vance, grow with Matt Vance. Matt, thank you for joining me for another episode of the Banking on Digital Growth podcast. This has been a lot of fun today, buddy.
Awesome. Thanks. Good seeing you.
Good seeing you as always. And until next time, be well, do good, and be the light.